Good afternoon and welcome to our next podcast here at The Way Forward. Today, we're very blessed and honored to have Mr. Scott Cohen, the CEO of Jaxon Artificial Intelligence or Jaxon AI Incorporated. And he is going to take time off his busy schedule on this holiday to be able to talk about leadership. And I think for a lot of our audience, understanding how artificial intelligence is developing, where it's going, and where we might consider it in our day-to-day lives or within our business communities or within the Department of Defense. And so, Scott, welcome. It's nice to meet you and see you here today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you wouldn't mind, for our audience, give us kind of your credentials. Who are you? Where are you from? And how did you get to this vaulted position?
Sure. Well, let's see. The story goes, I was in real estate, actually. I was doing real estate development, and someone broke down our door in the middle of the night and stole a whole bunch of equipment. So I looked into ways of protecting my construction sites. What kind of surveillance could I put in? And at the time, the internet was actually just getting going. Wireless wasn't really there yet. It was just starting to get there. And we didn't have the infrastructure on the construction site to be able to pump through the wired connections. So I was like, why don't I just have a wireless video camera and put them together? I can monitor it from my office and we'll have record of it, because if someone knocks down the door, they could steal the VCR also. So I decided, let's put together these two concepts, and it was kind of my aha moment. Why doesn't this go into a cell phone? And this is at the time when cell phones didn't have cameras.
Yeah.
I thought I was the inventor of the camera phone. And so I went back to school on this mission. I ended up at MIT and working on this concept of marrying a digital camera with a cell phone. And then as I'm studying, Nokia came out with one. This is 2003. But I was at MIT long enough to meet the right people. Greg Harmon, the co-founder of Jaxon, and I jumped into that concept. We still did wireless imaging. We brought it to law enforcement. We were one of the first BOLOs, be on the lookouts.
Yep.
So you could broadcast out an image to the field or take an image back, and then it turned into a interoperability system. Got into machine learning pretty early. Around 2008, we licensed technology from MIT that was DARPA funded, that was in the realm of machine learning. It was machine reasoning, very similar concepts. And then jumped in full bore to AI from there. We caught the bug and haven't looked back.
So since 2008, you've had your foot in the AI bug.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I don't know if I'd even heard of it in 2008, other than, of course, the Terminator and the cyborgs and all that kind of stuff. So fascinating. Heck of a story. It reminds me of the American president, when he's asking him why he ran for president. He said he was a shoe salesman. and he was mad at the Chamber of Commerce. And so he ran for a seat on the school board. Fascinating story. Thanks for sharing that. That's pretty cool.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. So here you are today, the beautiful green, lush background at your window there in your home office. Now you're the CEO. So tell us about that. You went from a good idea guy to an MIT student, you met your partner, and now you're the CEO of a company. How does that happen? How does one person do all that?
Just keep on doing and going.
Keep on doing and going. All right.
My grandfather had a lot of his name was Sam, and I call them Samisms. They're truisms.
Okay.
A lot of inspiration came from his ideals there, my father's ideals as well. He was, I think I have mentioned, he was a drill sergeant in the Army, so a lot of that rigor and discipline. And one of the Samisms was, everyone has the basic brain power, but those that separate are those that take the initiative to actually, and in very capital letters, do it.
Yep.
And that's really what it's all about, is keep on, showing up, keep on pushing forward.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you have any, now that you've been a CEO for a while, do you have any Scottisms?
Yeah, one Scottism is be brilliant and resilient,
Ah,
which kind
okay.
of echoes keep on doing it, but it's not just brute force doing it. You have to be smart about it. You
Yeah.
have to be strategic in how you spend your time and what you focus on.
Well, how do you figure out what's important to focus your time on? Is there just, is it
Content
intuitive?
daily.
Is there something you go through?
My routine is I do it daily, and I actually use a piece of paper with all the AI and all the digital stuff I do. I have a piece of paper. Yep, yep. And I have 11 rows in it, and I can only
Okay.
do 11 rows in one day. I mean, maybe I go through a sheet and I get to the next one, but I prioritize and then reprioritize on a new sheet every day. So everything keeps going up and crossed off and then reorganized. So it doesn't just get into a stale to-do list.
Okay.
And
So
yeah,
okay, I'm laughing because the guy who arguably came up with the iPhone
yeah,
idea, went to MIT and is doing AI, is make
paper.
a to-do list every day and prioritizing it on paper
Yeah, because I can hold
with a
it.
pen.
You can't turn it off. You
Yeah.
can't you can't accidentally delete it.
Yeah. And it sits right here and
Yeah,
it pulls at your heart all day
yeah,
long. You
yeah,
know, it's hard to procrastinate when it's in writing in front of you on a to-do list.
yeah. The
Uh,
other thing is if you write it, you're cognitively thinking about it, as opposed to if you're just copying and pasting it in a
yep.
digital environment. It's like, I don't know, it's just part of my process.
No, and that's a great technique. So I saw it. I think I can't remember the exact saying or the statistics, but it's like if you do something once, you have it for a small period of time. If you do it twice, it's quadruple the time. Do it three times, you own it for life. And so if you say something, write something,
Right.
do something, if you do it three times, it supposedly sticks with you for life. And that's the interesting enough, the Department of Defense kind of focuses on the triad in terms of everything that they do. You see a mission statement, it's going to have 3 points. You see an operations plan, it's going to have three phases. It's the units are going to have three subunits and three subunits within the three subunits, because for some reason the human mind can remember three things. If you put a fourth bullet, the human mind gets lost. You remember, West Point, duty, honor, country. Okay. Duty, honor, country. They didn't add any other words besides duty, honor, country. And so it's a fascinating thing. So it's interesting that you do that, because the writing does do that. And I have found the same thing. Actually, what's even better is you write it by hand and then the dog swipes it and you can't find it. And then you have to try to replicate what you did the first time. And it's surprising how much more brilliant you are the second time you write it.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually higher risk in this household for a 4-year-old to come and grab it and bring crayons to it. Yeah.
I had the same problem in my last unit in the Army. I had a lot of 4-year-olds run. No, just kidding. Just kidding. So you recently were down at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas for the National Security Roundtable. We had you come in there and talk to the students about, where you're at, what you're thinking, where's AI going in the future, and then how it is that you interact with the Department of Defense, because that's one of your clients is the Department of Defense. I'm curious if you wouldn't share some more of that with us. Why the Department of Defense, and where do you think AI can really help the Department of Defense to get to the next level?
Well, to answer the why question, I got into it at the beginning of the pandemic. We got accepted into an accelerator program that really was my fast track to figuring out how to and why to sell to the government. Why to wasn't what I learned. Why to was, I could pick any industry to focus on, and Greg Harmon as well. And we just find the altruistic aspects of working with the government and for our national security to be what we want to focus on. So it was per our, direction, and we've had our druthers here, if you will. As far as where the applications lie, in general, AI is great at doing anything you can do 1 second as a human. Wrote quick decision to make on this little slice of information and do it, thousands or millions of times over. Um, there are a lot of data points that need to be correlated for a lot of different use cases, where you have to quickly bring together information from maybe hundreds or at least dozens of sources. That's cognitive overload for a human, but if you think about it, they're broken down into multiple subtasks. And the AI is great at doing those multiple subtasks in parallel and presenting the human with the answer. And I think that's an important aspect for a lot of the DoD applications that I'm working on and I'm seeing, is to keep that human in the loop. We're not trying to replace humans, we're trying to give them superpowers. Have the AI do the rote manual work and let the human have the knowledge to bring the oversight.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think what, and you and I've talked about this when we've worked with DoD stuff and other AI companies that I watch, the pushback, and not just DoD probably more so than most because of the classifications and things that they want you to look at, the data, the amount of data that's necessary to accumulate and access to that data seems to be part of the apprehension, if you would, of DoD agencies working with companies like yours that have AI engines, because they don't want to give up the data, especially if it's humans involved and all that. How do you see that, stifling what you're doing, and how you could break through that in the future, if
It's
at all?
I mean, you have to get through it. It's a adoption of AI and the requirements to have that. And if you look at CDAO, all they've done the past couple of years since Dr. Martell came in is get the data ready, get the environments ready, because that is step one. Uh, I think of adoption of AI as the evolution of man, where you have lemur, chimp, um, uh, human, I add to it, you get into a cyborg and whatnot. And depending on your sophistication level, I correlate to that. And if you don't have your data right, you're still a Neanderthal. You're not even a human yet. You can't really use AI until you get the data right.
Right, right. And is AI able to help you get the data right, or is that a manual process that people like me are worried about?
No, I mean, there are plenty of companies that are emerging that it's using AI to help with that part of the problem.
Yeah. And I think that, go ahead.
What people bicker about is the policies around the data,
Yeah.
deciding the ontologies or the data dictionaries that are going to go into it, which is a fleeting thing. My recommendation is do it ad hoc as needed per use case. Have a meta policy that still gives direction to the units or the teams that are working on it, but don't get into the nitty gritty of every, piece of an ontology and everything that you'd have to think through from a policy perspective, because that's prohibitive to progress, and it's a fleeting, never-ending task that you'll never wrap your arms around.
Well, then how do you argue that with the general public when we suddenly see these, once again we went to a small company and they leaked something, was it Tradewinds or whoever that was a few years ago, and Project Maven, other things like that, where you only hear about the bad news and in the news, and it's like,
Right.
are we giving these private companies, government information? I mean, basically what you just told me was, if you don't have some flexibility to do that, we're going to be caught in the Stone Ages.
Yes, we have to get the data right. We are going to be stuck in the Stone Ages if we don't. But you don't have to get the data perfect. You just have to make it accessible.
Yeah.
That's the rub. Just make it accessible.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought up a neat point, getting the data right, because I see some companies that's what they do. They're trying to help them organize the data so it can be used quickly and effectively, and it can draw conclusions to help the human make better decisions. Once you get that right, then you can control it better if you have control of your data. I say control it. You can provide the appropriate access that's necessary to compartmentalize it, then get it to somebody like you who can really do something with it to show you things you had never even thought of capable. And I think that's the thing, is we're always wanting to know, the military is good about saying, I don't have a requirement. Well, it's because you don't know you have a requirement. If the human sits around thinking, I need a phone for my camera or a camera for my phone, okay, that's great. You have a requirement. I would have never thought of that till 2024. I would be neat to have a phone on my camera or my camera and a phone. I can even say it right. And you thought of it, geez, what, 2000 something early. And that gets stifled because we don't have a requirement. I, as the government person, didn't see the need.
Right.
And so that was, one of the things the Army does really well is AUSA. And I remember Gordon Sullivan, who was, one of the main guys with that when I was there, and Bob Brown today. He said, let's let industry spend their money on R&D and run around and come up with great ideas. And then let's create an environment where they can tell us about it so we can go, oh, that would be really neat. I never would have thought to do that to solve that. And I think it's, those barriers for that continue today. And I know companies like yours fight through that. I mean, you called it something earlier. What was it you called it? That no man's land between
Valley of Death.
the valley of death.
Yes.
Can you explain that? What does that mean?
That's what people refer to as companies that are trying to break into DoD, where they have won SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research grants, and they're trying to become a program of record that will have continuing money. Grants are one time, programs of record are ongoing. I know you know that, but for the audience,
Audience.
Um, and so to get into a program of record is challenging. The bigs dominate in the defense industrial base. So there are different mechanisms by which you can keep the runway extending there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of what I'm deep in the throes of doing now.
Okay. How do you keep your team motivated with these kinds of contracts? I mean, this has got to be, it's kind of like you have family, you have money, then you don't, and you have money, then you don't, you have resources, and you don't.
Yeah.
How do you manage a company like that?
Yeah, well, that's actually why the advent of the concept of dual use makes sense, is because you have the commercial side to balance
Okay.
the sometimes unpredictable timing of cash flow with government work. So that's how we balanced it.
So you have one side that works with the private sector
That's right.
side that folks, because I've had other guests who said, at some point in that evolution, as you're doing that, and maybe your long range strategy is to do that you do that as an interim, as kind of a bridging mechanism to get there as a small company. But once you break in, you have to commit. I mean, do you tear the Band-Aid off and just do federal, or do you continue to do both? I mean, where are you thinking?
I don't think there's a right answer. Going all in on DoD makes a ton of sense, and I think that you can do really well in that. I've just gravitated toward this dual use because it makes sense for me. I have the experience on the commercial side, not giving that up. Really love what we're doing on the DoD side, not giving that up, and we got the product in the middle. So the
Okay.
technology we work on is what I keep people excited with.
Awesome.
It's not the contract work, it's the innovation that we're doing, pushing the boundaries, the intellectual property of this all.
So as a CEO, your technique then is you keep all those really talented, bright people. Don't let them worry about that kind of stuff. You got it. Is that kind of the way you guys run it?
It's on my shoulders.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and that's bringing my point. So how do you? I mean, you're really a really flat organization. You're thin. How do you do? How far out do you try to plan? What's your planning, horizon? Do you have one?
At least a month. Is that good?
Okay, but I mean that's kind of the mantra of the entrepreneurial approach that you're taking with this year.
Unfortunately, that is the truth. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not as bad as a month. 3 months. I mean, I do try to look out. I have a pro forma where I looked out 3 years,
right.
but I worry about each month.
Well, tell the audience what your pro forma, how that works. I mean,
Well, you look at current expenses, you project out what hiring might be, what additional expenses might be, like, costs of offices and infrastructure costs and whatnot. And then you make some guesses as to what projects are coming. Some aren't guesses because you have multi-year contracts, and I'm
right.
including those, but some are predicting based off of the sales capacity, historical capability of the sales team, what it looks like in the out years.
Okay. So an aspiring entrepreneur that might be watching this someday, you know, the month by month, the personal involvement, the amount of dedication that you have to have as a young entrepreneur trying to build something, any thoughts on that other than what I just said? I mean, how hard is it and why do you keep doing it? What motivates you?
I'll go back to the saying I said in the beginning, keep on doing and going is the answer. And what separates those that have succeeded and those have not is that those that have succeeded haven't given up. So that's what you have to come into with the mindset around. Don't expect it to be a quick hit. There's no get rich quick schemes here.
Okay.
Really is a lot of grind, but just never give up.
But a lot of young entrepreneurs I meet, they believe that there is big money real fast.
Because it's sensationalized.
Okay. Okay. So it's hard work, just like being a W-2
It'll
employee.
work.
I mean, what would motivate you to stay in this arena instead of just, I mean, I'm sure that if you dropped your resume at some big company that was doing this kind of stuff, that with your MIT degree and everything, you would be snatched up so fast. I mean, why keep doing this to yourself? Why put
Yeah.
yourself through this?
Sometimes I don't know. I guess it's the freedom. Everyone says that. But for me, I think it's more toward accomplishing something. Like, what do I want to leave as my legacy? I worked for a big company or I created something special.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had an impact on the world that wasn't just being a cog in the big engine. I was creating the engines.
There you go. So, yeah, I mean, it's your vision coming to reality, and
Yeah.
the satisfaction with that, even if it doesn't make you a penny, your motivation was not money. I mean, it doesn't sound like it is anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, money certainly comes with it. Every entrepreneur will lie to you if they say it's not a part of it. But yeah, it's about accomplishing a goal.
Yeah, the money is a means to an end. It's not the goal. And
Yeah.
you and what are your goals? What do you aspire to?
All right. So the ultimate goal that we're focused on right now, our BHAG, if you will, big, hairy, audacious goal. You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Is to be able to describe what you want an AI to build for you, and it will go off and build it. It won't be a complete black box. You can see what decisions it made, and it can come back and ask you questions along the way. But it's almost like set it and forget it. You'll get your application on the other side.
Okay.
I have a project that we're proposing. I'm deep in the throes of writing it up now. It's decent chunk of change for this company to have a bunch of software developers come in, architect the solution, code it, test it, iterate, get it right, harden it, get ready for scale. That there's still a lot of work. You've seen in the news, I don't know if you have, there's a new AI programmer.
Mm,
and and companies are now starting to charge for their agents, their AI agents, on an hourly basis, as if they were human
yeah.
laborers, just
Yeah.
AI generated. I think that's where the future is going, is to have these agents that can accomplish certain tasks. Like the one I want to do is build custom applications, but these agents will be doing a variety of different tasks.
Oh, wow. Wow. I
Getting
had
into
not seen
futurism.
that.
So agent to agent communication is my prediction, is that we'll all have a bunch of agents, not just one representing us, and our agents will interface with other people's agents to accomplish certain tasks. Could
Wow.
be marketplaces, buying and selling. It could be setting up appointments and, dealing with a lot of the different nuances of daily life.
Wow.
We'll
Wow.
still be the bosses, but these agents, which are, to describe them a little bit more, it's AI models like you see, ChatGPT is an AI model. It's a
Right.
foundation model, as it's called. And out of the box, you can ask it a question and get an answer, but it hasn't been tuned or given instructions to be a certain application. It hasn't been told this is the task that you are going to be an expert at. That's what an agent does. An agent takes that foundation model and adds in layers to coerce it to be an expert at a particular field.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's fascinating. I had not seen that, but you think that's the next big thing.
That's the next big wave, yeah.
Okay, cool. So away from the cyborgs and back to you as a human. You're at the top. You have a partner who I've never met. I'm assuming you're in some sort of a peer relationship, but you're both doing pretty much the same thing. Who are your mentors? Who are the people that you go, man, I'm at a loss to what to do next with my people, my technology, or my own well-being? Do you have mentors that you reach out to, or how do you
Yeah,
do it?
we do actually. And we've had them almost since the beginning, back in like 2003. When Greg and I first met, we got into a program at MIT called the Venture Mentoring Service.
Wow.
These
Okay.
are all MIT grads that have been there and done that. A lot of them have been retired. Some are still in industry, but a lot that have already, done their piece and they're giving back. And so we meet with them regularly. They're our mentors, and they donate their time, and we're the problem that they help solve.
That's awesome. So yeah, are they assigned to you or do you pick them from like a bench?
Oh, they choose us. We have to accept them, of course, but they're given, what we're doing as a company, and they can sign up to help or not.
Wow. I wonder how many schools do something like that. I'd never
I don't
heard of it.
know. It's a great program. I
Yeah.
really,
So
because
you gotta be an MIT grad, I guess, to get
you, yeah,
that. Can't just know an MIT grad,
yeah.
right?
And
Wow.
then and then I also have a bunch of advisors. So if you look at our website, we have an About Us section, and there's a bunch of advisors there, and I meet with them regularly, and I treat them like mentors also.
Oh, good. What about you personally? Do you have any mentors? I mean, is there somebody besides these professionally aligned people, you know, and you don't have to say a name. I mean, I have so many asymmetric mentors. I mean, I consider you an asymmetric mentor.
I consider
I
you
haven't
one as
said, hey,
well.
Scott, would you please be my mentor? But
Yeah, no,
but it's, I mean, like right now, I'm going to talk all day long about what you just talked about, agents, because I just learned something from you, no matter, who's older, who's younger, who's in what profession. You just taught me something that I'm now going to go. Well, you taught me two things. I'm going to go look at the MIT mentorship program and see how many of the universities are doing this. And second is to read more about this agent concept. Because I got to tell you, it makes me a little nervous in a good way, in a good way.
well, the nervous part is who's going to regulate the agent to agent communications.
Yeah.
Where's the level of trust? Where's the AT&T of agent communications?
Well, and who allows them to talk to each other? And what if they find a way to talk to each other without your knowledge?
Yeah, there
And
needs to be.
I mean, what if you don't have a non-disclosure agreement with another company and two agents who did some previous work and the NDAs expired and now
Yeah,
they're giving up trade secrets and copyright and all that?
untapped area for all those entrepreneurs out there. That's an area I would recommend getting into.
Well, it sounds like the federal government needs to come in and give you some very strict guidance.
I think it should start with the government. Actually, I've spoken to some government agencies already that this is the future, and someone should get ahead of it.
So in my mind, I have an avatar as the agent. Is that am I visualizing that correctly?
Yeah, sure. But that's just
Okay.
the
I mean, I have a
more,
hard time with Chat GPT because it's not an avatar to talk me through it.
it's more about understanding your likes, wants, desires, preferences, historical information to represent you properly.
It's like another very focused, smart person that you train to
Yeah,
what you need them to know.
yeah,
And then they're okay doing the same stuff over and over again and figuring out how to do it better each time.
they don't mind.
Well,
And
I hope they're using a piece of paper to write down their to-do list and getting better every day.
Despite the movies, you can swear at them and they're not going to remember.
Okay, I'm not going to get into the Terminator because I think they will eventually. But anyway, good. So we've talked about the role of AI, and this is fascinating. And then, do you see something like this in DoD, or do you see other things that DoD should be looking at? What kind of innovative things are they? Are they not telling you they have requirements for that you think they should?
I think, and I'm not the only one to talk about this, I'm echoing some very smart people within the department. Mosaic warfare is not enough of a focal point, meaning you have so many different assets across the Department of Defense that if an AI could help figure out what mosaics, what individual pieces go together to accomplish a certain goal and truly be multi-domain, cross-domain, I'll use the term JADC2 because that's what the hot topic is, where you can understand all these available pieces, functionality, skill sets at your disposal, and let the AI help piece together which components will work best to each other while keeping in mind how to optimize it, logistics, all that stuff. I think that's where a lot of opportunity lies.
Yeah, one of the things I was responsible for in our Army audience will recognize the term the patch chart, which was trying to figure out what the algorithm was for units deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan simultaneously over great periods of time, realizing that, like your business, the ground requirements were changing almost hourly. So every day we would get a requirement for another engineer platoon or another tank company or something like that. And you didn't have one. And if you had one that was just about to come over, if you pulled them forward, then you had to take one from this one and pull up here. And then Congress would say, well, what happens if we take away this much money? Or if we tell you can only build this many ships? And so doing this with yellow, orange, and green stickies on a dry erase board that was 144 feet long, which was what we were doing in 2004 and 5. Somebody figured out how to put it on an Excel spreadsheet, but still, one drop in the bucket up here did not show me the ripple of all the way over the next 10 years what would happen: force structure, money, budget, people, burnout rates, suicide prevention, all of that kind of stuff.
Right,
But there is technology today that can, you know.
right.
So I have literally seen conversations where someone in the Navy would say, well, let's take one airplane off that future aircraft carrier. And you can see it reminded me of when you see the flights changing in the European airport where they got the flick, 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 flick. And you would see this thing go from left to right, and all of a sudden you would see all the numbers change. It would highlight the increases and decreases. It would show the number of people, the training base, how long it would take one airplane would cause about 3,000 second and third order effects, which you cannot do that as a human. I don't
That's
care how many guys are in there with slide rules. Nobody can go, there's 3,007 second order effects.
That's exactly what I was thinking during the wargaming exercise a few weeks ago, is this really needs an AI that's figuring out the impact of moving this aircraft over here.
Yeah, yeah, and you're definitely at the discretion of the training, the education, the enthusiasm, the aggressiveness, the personality type of the individual who's sitting there with the answer,
Right.
to the 3,000-second answer that could be the one that causes life or death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
When I was thinking about this, I was like, well, it's not just about the logistics, it's also about the other information that's out there.
yeah. I mean,
That's
imagine we could use it to tell Congress we only need $1.2 trillion. We don't need 1.62 trillion. I mean, if you could actually show the logic behind the term readiness. I mean, the term readiness for the military is very hard to articulate to the civilian sector, to our members of Congress and everything. So, readiness is as much intuitive as it is physical and observable and accountable. So, when you say, is your unit really ready to do this? And they may look like it, and they may be, aligned to do it. But in reality, the commander, that's why the human has to stay involved in this, say, yeah, the math is there, but,
That's
and
thing.
so that's the part I don't think you're ever going to figure out with AI.
So at the National Security Roundtable, I got into discussions about operational art, and it
Mhm.
reminds me a lot of that, that there's the black and white math you can do, but then there's a lot in between that has to be figured out.
Yeah. Well, and that's why they teach, and that the military is very good about art and science, you
Yeah.
know. And so the hard part for the humans is, especially if you're like me, the science, the battlefield geometry, the logistics, the amount of movement the earth makes when you shoot around in the air. Who would ever think that that round's going to go up and come down? It's going to be off by 10 feet because the earth moved 10 feet when you
Right.
shot 8 seconds ago, whatever that is. Those kinds of things, the battlefield geometry is the hard part. That's why, guys, Napoleon wasn't a great commander. He was a great scientist, and it came to battlefield geometry. He did things like figure out how to increase the rate of march so his soldiers got there first. He figured out how to bottle food because he drank wine on the battlefield, but didn't understand why he had to go slaughter cows and upset all the townsfolk wherever he was at. So he had food shipped to him from France in bottles. So he was arguably the founder of meals ready to eat that we use today in the Army. He's kind of like you. He didn't get credit for it. For the iPhone camera, but that's the kind of stuff where he's able to transcend the battlefield geometry and the common sense art of leadership. That's the guy who, we call him Napoleon's corporal for a reason, because Napoleon would come up with these beautifully articulated the planning that you saw. He would do all that himself, the two or three smart guys, and he would have this massive battle planned. But then he'd walk out of his tent, up 3 days, coming up with a plan, and grab some poor random corporal walking by and drag him in the tent and then issue him the order like he was one of his commanders. And then he would look at this uneducated Frenchman and say, did you understand what I just said? And he goes, I think so. And he goes, well, show me what I just said. And the kid would get up and explain it. And he thought, okay, it's a good plan, because that young person who is not trained in this can understand it and execute it without, having to have a college degree or officer training. And so,
Fascinating.
yeah, that always was a technique for me. I would
I
go
didn't know
find,
that.
just when I thought I was the smartest, most clever person in the world, I would go find somebody and bring them in and say, what do you think? And they would go, oh, that's really stupid, Chris. And oh, back to the drawing board. Technique, just a technique. You might want to try that with your smart guys downstairs when you think you got a great idea.
Yeah,
See
I've
what
known.
Okay, hey, let's wrap up. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Any encouragement, words of wisdom, or anything that you might want to share?
Yeah, it seems like Napoleon came up with the mom test.
Ah, yes. All right, now you're gonna have to tell them what the mom test is.
That's the book. The
Yeah.
mom test. If you can explain what you're working on to your mom, then you've
Yep.
got your pitch down for a startup.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
If it's
Exactly.
too complicated and no one understands it, you're not going to go anywhere, because it's all
Yeah.
about storytelling and getting people to remember. Back to the earlier conversation about people can remember three things.
Well,
That
I,
you have to be good at being articulate.
that's why I wanted you on the show, because for me, it's a good leader. One, makes me feel valued when they're talking to me, like I'm not, like my opinion matters as well, that they're telling me something that they think is going to help me. But the other is be able to take something as complex as what you do for a living and help someone like me understand it. You're able to take the complex and make it simple. I wouldn't say the mom test. I know it's the book's title, but for me, it was always, if you can't explain this to your grandmother, then you're wasting your time. So, well, good
Right.
for you, sir. Thanks for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it and wish you the best of luck. And hopefully somebody will watch this and be a better entrepreneur, or at least decide they don't want to be one and go join one of those big companies.
Or the army.
Oh, the Army. That's right. We're always putting a plug in for the Army.
All
Thank you.
right, very good. Thank you.